Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
Jason stood in the dimly lit living room of the Quartermain mansion, the flickering fire casting long shadows across the room. The air was thick with tension, the kind that weighed down every breath. He hadn't been back here much since Monica's passing. It was still too raw, too strange to stand in the house without hearing her voice echoing through the halls. But now, as the family lawyer unfolded the newly discovered will, everything Jason thought he knew about his mother was about to be shattered. He clenched his jaw, the faint scent of Monica's perfume still lingering in the room, as if her spirit refused to let go. "Are you sure this is real?" Jason asked, his tone low and guarded. Diane, the family attorney, nodded slowly. "It was found in a locked deposit box in Monica's name. The date indicates it was updated just 6 months before she died." The words hit Jason like a blow to the chest. 6 months before her death, Monica had seemed fine, strong even. She had been organizing family dinners, fussing over the hospital foundation, and trying to mend broken relationships. What could she possibly have written that needed to be hidden? Across the room, Tracy folded her arms, eyeing Jason with that usual mix of curiosity and disdain. "Well, let's hear it then," she said sharply. "We're not going to sit here all night pretending Monica was a saint. The truth always finds a way out, doesn't it?" Jason shot her a glare but said nothing. He wanted to protect Monica's memory, but he also needed to know the truth. Diane took a deep breath and began reading the letter aloud. "To my family, if you're hearing this, it means I've passed. I have lived a long, complicated life, and not everything I've done has been noble. There are things I have hidden, choices I have made, and people I have hurt." The words made Jason's stomach twist. He could hear Monica's voice in his head, that calm tone of hers when she confessed something painful. "I know this will change how you see me," the letter continued. "But I cannot rest without revealing what I've done." A hush fell over the room. Even Tracy looked uneasy now. Jason stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Keep reading," he said. Diane's voice wavered slightly as she continued. "Many years ago, after Alan's death, I was involved in something that went beyond what a doctor should ever do. It started as a desperate attempt to save a patient, but it became something darker." Jason's face went pale. "What does that mean?" he asked quietly. Diane looked down, her lips pressed together. "She writes here, she falsified medical records at General Hospital. To protect someone. A patient who wasn't who they appeared to be." Tracy gasped. "Monica? Falsifying records? That's not just unethical, that's criminal," she said, her voice rising. Jason felt a rush of confusion and anger swirl in his chest. "Who was the patient?" he demanded. Diane's eyes scanned the next lines. "She doesn't say here. She just says she did it to protect someone she loved. Someone she couldn't lose again." Jason's mind raced. Someone she loved? Could it have been him? Or AJ? Maybe even Drew, when he was brought back and in critical condition? "There has to be more," Jason said, his voice trembling slightly. "Keep reading." Diane nodded and went on. "She writes, the truth about Drew's accident, the one that left him in the coma, isn't what it seems. I knew something that I never told anyone. And I made a decision to bury that truth for the sake of the family." Jason's breath caught. "Drew?" he whispered. The firelight flickered against his face as the truth slowly clawed its way to the surface. "What does she mean by that?" Tracy leaned forward. "Are you saying Monica knew more about Drew's accident? That she was involved?" Diane hesitated. "She writes that she switched a report, something about who was responsible for the crash." Jason's fists clenched. "You mean she covered for someone?" Diane looked at him and nodded. "Yes. She says she couldn't bear to see another son destroyed." Jason took a step back, shaking his head in disbelief. "So she lied to protect me?" The room fell silent. Tracy's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. Jason, are you saying you were the one responsible for Drew's accident? His voice broke as he said, I don't remember. I was in that crash too. But if Monica thought I did it, she protected me. The realization hit him hard. Monica had falsified evidence, hidden the truth, and lived with that guilt all these years, just to keep him safe. She took it to her grave, Jason murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Diane looked down again. There's more. Jason looked up sharply. What more could there be? Diane hesitated before continuing. She says, if you're reading this, I need you to understand that I never meant to cause harm. But I couldn't lose another child. What I did because I love you, Jason. Jason turned away, fighting back tears. Tracy's expression softened, though she tried to hide it. Well, she muttered, it seems the Quartermaines never change. Always secrets, always lies. But even her usual sarcasm couldn't cut through the heaviness in the air. Jason's voice cracked as he whispered, she lied for me. She broke the law for me. He felt like the ground was crumbling beneath him. Everything he believed about Monica, that she was the moral anchor of the family, the one who always did the right thing, was shattered. He thought about all those years she had stood by him, forgiven him, fought for him. Now he understood the weight she must have carried every time she looked at him. Later that night, after everyone had left, Jason sat alone by the fireplace, the will in his hands. The pages trembled slightly as he turned them. He could still hear Monica's laughter, her voice calling him my son, even after he'd pushed her away for so long. Now, her final confession haunted him. Sam entered quietly, her eyes filled with concern. Jason, she said softly, I heard what happened. Are you okay? He shook his head slowly. She lied for me, Sam. She committed a crime to protect me. I don't even know if I deserved it. Sam walked closer, kneeling beside him. She did it because she loved you. That's what mothers do. Maybe it wasn't right, but you can't judge her for that. Jason stared into the flames. But she covered up the truth. Drew could have died because of what she did. Sam placed her hand on his. You think Monica didn't already punish herself for that? You think she didn't live with that guilt every day? Jason's eyes filled with tears. I should have known. I should have seen how much she was hiding. Sam shook her head. You can't blame yourself for that. Monica made her choices. She was strong enough to carry that burden so you didn't have to. Jason looked up at her, his voice barely a whisper. And now I have to live with it. The next morning, he stood outside General Hospital, staring at the building that had been Monica's life's work. He walked through the halls, memories flooding back, Monica comforting him after AJ's death, her lectures about doing the right thing, her quiet pride every time he walked through the door. He stopped outside her old office, the door still bearing her nameplate. He stepped inside. Everything was as she had left it, neat, orderly, her framed photo of Alan on the desk. Jason ran his fingers across the desk surface, feeling the weight of her secret pressing down on him. He found himself whispering, "Why didn't you tell me?" Suddenly, Elizabeth appeared at the doorway. "Jason," she said gently. He turned, his eyes red. "Liz, did you know about any of this?" She shook her head. "No. I'm just as shocked as everyone else. Monica was, she was one of the best doctors we had. But I know how much she loved you." Jason nodded, his voice hollow. "Yeah. She loved me enough to break the law." Liz took a step closer. "Maybe she believed protecting you was the only way she could make peace with everything she lost. Alan, AJ, Emily, she couldn't lose you too." He looked down at the papers still clutched in his hand. "But now everyone knows. The board, the hospital, they're going to tear her name apart." Liz frowned. "Then don't let them. If you really want to honor Monica, protect her legacy. She made her choice out of love. You can make yours out of forgiveness." Jason's eyes softened. Forgiveness, the word felt heavy on his tongue. He wasn't sure he could forgive himself, much less her. But as he looked around the office one last time, he realized that maybe forgiveness wasn't about forgetting, it was about understanding why someone did what they did. Later that day, Diane approached him with another envelope. "This was also in the deposit box," she said. Jason opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter addressed simply, to Jason. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. "My dearest son," it began, "I know by now you've learned the truth. I never wanted you to find out this way, but I couldn't leave this world with lies between us. I saw so much pain in your eyes over the years, and I thought if I could take some of that burden, maybe you'd finally be free. But I see now that the truth always finds its way home. Whatever happens next, please remember this, I have always been proud of you. You made mistakes, yes, but you always tried to do what was right. That's all I ever wanted for you. I love you, Jason. Always, Mom." Tears blurred his vision as he read her words. He pressed the letter against his chest, whispering, "I love you too, Mom." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees surrounding the mansion, carrying Monica's memory with it. The truth was painful, yes, but it was hers. And now it was his to carry. Jason knew that no matter what happened next, he would make sure Monica's sacrifices weren't in vain. He would protect her legacy, not out of guilt, but out of love. Because that's what Monica had done for him all along. Even as the world around him began to question Monica's reputation, Jason stood firm. He would face the consequences of her actions, and his own, with the same quiet strength she had shown him. And somewhere, deep down, he could almost hear her voice again, steady, comforting, and proud, reminding him that family, no matter how broken, always finds its way back to love. The air in the lawyer's office was stale, thick with the scent of old books and the faint, floral ghost of Monica Quartermain's perfume. It was a scent Jason Morgan had come to associate with unwavering support, with quiet strength, with home. Now, it was just a memory, a cruel reminder of the void her passing had left in his life. He sat rigidly in a deep leather armchair, his posture as unyielding as the grief that had settled like a stone in his chest. Across from him, the family was assembled, a collection of faces etched with sorrow and a palpable, anxious tension. Alan sat beside him, a hand resting on Jason's forearm, a silent offer of solidarity that Jason could barely feel. Ned and Olivia were there, along with Brooke Lynn, her usual vivacity subdued. Tracy, ever the pragmatist, sat with a sharp, observant gaze, missing nothing. The heart of the Quartermain family, Edward and Lila, were a painful absence in the room, but their legacy of drama and consequence hung heavy in the air. This was a family that knew how to grieve, but they also knew how to fight, how to harbor secrets, and how to be shattered by them. At the head of the mahogany table sat Mr. Thornhill, the Quartermain family's attorney for 3 decades. He was a man whose face seemed to have been shaped by a lifetime of delivering difficult news, his expression perpetually settled into lines of somber resolve. He adjusted his glasses, the small sound unnaturally loud in the hushed room. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice a low, respectful rumble. "We are here today to honor the final wishes of Monica Quartermain. She was a remarkable woman, a pillar of this family, and she was meticulous in her preparations." He tapped a thick, legal-sized envelope on the table before him. "This is her last will and testament, updated and signed just 6 weeks ago." A collective, almost imperceptible shift went through the room. 6 weeks. She had known. The cancer that had taken her had been swift in its final assault, but Monica, in her characteristic way, had used what little time she had to put every last affair in order. Jason's jaw tightened. He remembered those final weeks, the hushed conversations between Monica and Alan, the way she'd held his hand a little tighter, the specific, almost urgent love she had shown to each member of her family. He had thought it was the clarity of impending death. Now, he wondered if it was something else. Penance, perhaps. "As is customary, I will read the will in its entirety," Thornhill continued, breaking the seal on the envelope with a precise sliver of a letter opener. The sound was final, like a period at the end of a sentence. Monica's last sentence. The initial passages were as expected. bequests to long-serving staff, generous donations to the hospital that bore her family's name, a trust fund for the grandchildren. Tracy received a specific piece of jewelry that had belonged to Lila, a gesture that made her blink rapidly and look away. Ned was left a significant portion of stock in ELQ. Each distribution was met with quiet nods, a few tears, the soft murmur of acknowledgement. It was a map of Monica's love, conventional and clear. Then, Thornhill's tone shifted. It became heavier, the words chosen with more deliberate care. Now, we come to the matter of the residuary estate, which comprises the bulk of her assets, including her shares in Quartermaine Holdings, her personal fortune, and the deed to the Quartermaine mansion itself. All eyes were on Jason. He was her son, her beloved Jason. The one she had fought for, defended, and cherished above all others. The one who had been there for her through every crisis, who had become her rock after the loss of his brother, AJ. It was an unspoken truth in the room that Jason would inherit the mantle. He would become the new patriarch, the guardian of the Quartermaine legacy. Jason felt the expectation like a physical weight. He didn't want the money or the power. He wanted his mother back. He wanted to hear her voice one more time, to ask her advice, to see her smile. The empire she was leaving behind was a cold consolation. To my son, Jason Morgan, Thornhill read, his eyes meeting Jason's for a brief, unreadable moment, I bequeath the entirety of my residuary estate, with one, specific, and non-negotiable condition. A condition? Murmurs rippled through the room. Quartermaine wills were famous for their conditions, but Monica had always been straightforward with Jason. This was new. The condition is this, Thornhill continued, his voice dropping, demanding absolute silence. Jason must first read, in its entirety, the private confession contained within this sealed enclosure. He lifted a smaller, plain manila envelope from within the larger one. It was unmarked, but it seemed to radiate a cold dread. This confession details events of my own making, actions I took that I have carried with me as a burden of profound guilt and regret. It pertains directly to the life and death of your brother, AJ Quartermaine. The air left Jason's lungs. AJ. The name was a ghost that haunted the halls of the mansion, a specter of their fractured family history. AJ, his brother, his rival, the man whose life had been a tangled web of addiction, resentment, and pain. AJ, who was dead. Alan's hand tightened on Jason's arm. Monica? What could she possibly have to confess about AJ? He whispered, his voice strained. Tracy leaned forward, her eyes sharp with a hunter's focus. This should be interesting. I always said that woman had more secrets than a confessional. Jason, Thornhill said, extending the envelope. Monica was adamant. You are to read this now, in private. The adjoining office is at your disposal. The execution of the will is contingent upon your acceptance of its contents. If, after reading, you choose to refuse the inheritance, the estate will be dispersed according to the alternate instructions detailed in an addendum. Every instinct in Jason's body screamed at him to refuse. To walk away. He didn't need the money. He didn't want this bomb she had left for him. What confession could be so terrible that she had to deliver it from beyond the grave? What could she have done that pertained to AJ's death? AJ had died from his own self-destructive spiral, a heart pushed beyond its limits by a life of excess. It was a tragedy, but a straightforward one. Or so he had always believed. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. He looked at Alan, whose face was a mask of confusion and concern. He saw the curiosity and burgeoning suspicion on the faces of his family. He had no choice. To refuse would be to betray Monica's final wish, to cast a shadow of unanswerable questions over her memory. He had to know. Slowly, mechanically, he stood. His legs felt numb. He walked to the head of the table and took the envelope from Thornhill's hand. It was heavier than it looked. I'll be in the other room, he said, his voice rough, unfamiliar to his own ears. He walked into the adjoining study, a small, book-lined room with a single high-backed chair. He closed the door, the click of the latch sounding like the sealing of a tomb. The silence in here was absolute, oppressive. He stood for a long moment, just staring at the envelope in his hands. This was it. The last communication from his mother. Not a letter of love, but a confession. With a sharp, jerky motion, he tore it open. Inside were several pages of handwritten script. Monica's elegant, flowing handwriting. The sight of it was a fresh wave of grief, so potent it made him dizzy. He sank into the chair, the leather groaning in protest. He took a deep, shuddering breath and began to read. My dearest Jason. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are sitting in Mr. Thornhill's office, surrounded by our family, about to have your world, and the memory you hold of me, shattered into 1,000 pieces. There are no words to express how sorry I am for that. I am a coward for not telling you this while I drew breath, but my love for you, my fear of seeing the love in your eyes turn to hatred, was stronger than my courage. So, I leave you with this, my final, terrible truth. You believe that your brother, AJ, died as a result of his own poor choices. That his heart, weakened by years of alcohol and drug abuse, simply gave out. That is the story I let everyone believe. It is a story I actively cultivated and protected. It is a lie. Jason's blood ran cold. The words on the page seemed to swim before his eyes. A lie. The truth is, AJ did not die of natural causes. His death was not an accident of his own making. His death was facilitated. Jason's breath hitched. Facilitated. The word was so clinical, so cold. What did it mean? In the months leading up to his death, AJ was in a terrible state. His resentment towards you, towards your father, towards the entire family, had curdled into something dark and dangerous. He was not just a lost soul anymore, Jason, he was becoming a genuine threat. He had begun making overtures to some of the most ruthless elements of the criminal underworld, people even you would hesitate to cross. He wasn't just seeking money, he was seeking power, and he intended to use it to destroy the Quartermain Empire and everyone in it. He had uncovered certain financial discrepancies from years ago, dealings of Edward's that were best left buried. He threatened to expose them, to bring the entire company down in a scandal that would have sent your father to prison and left countless employees destitute. Jason remembered that time. AJ had been more volatile, more venomous than ever. There had been vague threats, drunken rants. Jason had dismissed most of it as the bluster of a bitter man. He had tried to reason with him, had tried to get him into rehab, but AJ had been unmovable. Had Jason been blind? Had he been so focused on seeing AJ as a victim that he missed the predator he was becoming? I tried everything, Jason. I begged him. I pleaded. I offered him money, a position in the company, anything to steer him away from the path he was on. But he was too far gone. He reveled in the power his knowledge gave him. He told me he would watch us all burn, and he would be standing in the ashes, laughing. He specifically threatened you. He said he had a plan to frame you for a crime that would put you in prison for the rest of your life. He knew about your work, your associations. He had gathered evidence, fabricated some of it, I'm sure, but it was compelling enough to be catastrophic. A cold fury began to mix with Jason's grief. He had known AJ was angry, but this? This was a level of calculated malice he hadn't thought his brother capable of. The night he died, he came to see me. He was sober, for once, and that made his words all the more terrifying. He laid out his entire plan. He was going to the authorities the next morning. He showed me a file. It contained enough to ruin your father, and to have you arrested for conspiracy, racketeering, even hints of murder. He was giddy with it. He said, finally, Jason will be the one who is nothing. He'll be a convict, a disgrace. And I will have everything. Jason could picture it. The manic gleam in AJ's eyes. The triumph. The decades of perceived slights and jealousies coalescing into this single, destructive act. He felt a sickening lurch in his stomach. I was desperate. I couldn't let him destroy you, Jason. I couldn't let him destroy this family. You have to understand, I saw no other way. He had left me no other way. We argued. Heavens, how we argued. He called me a pathetic mother who always chose her golden child over her flawed one. And in that moment, filled with a fear and a rage I have never felt before or since, I did something unforgivable. Jason's grip on the paper tightened, his knuckles turning white. He could feel what was coming, a tidal wave of horror building with every word. He had a glass of whiskey. He always did when he was celebrating. I had a small bottle of digoxin in my medicine cabinet. It was a leftover prescription from when your father had his heart issues years ago. It's a medication that, in the correct dosage, regulates the heartbeat. In a large dose, it can stop it. It is also very difficult to detect in an autopsy, especially in someone with a known, pre-existing heart condition. No. The word was a silent scream in Jason's mind. No, no, no. While his back was turned, gloating, looking out the window at the city he planned to conquer, I emptied the entire bottle into his drink. I stirred it. I watched him drink it. I sat with him as he began to feel unwell. I told him he had just had too much to drink. I held his hand as he slipped away. I murdered my own son, Jason. I watched the life leave his eyes, and I felt a terrible, shameful sense of relief. The pages fell from Jason's hands, fluttering to the floor like dead leaves. He couldn't breathe. The walls of the small room seemed to press in on him, the air too thick to inhale. His mother. His kind, dignified, loving mother. A murderer. Not just any murderer. A matricide. She had killed AJ. She had poisoned him. She had sat there, holding his hand, and had watched him die. The images flooded his brain, unbidden, horrific. AJ, confused, in pain, looking to his mother for comfort, not knowing she was the source of his agony. Monica, her face a mask of maternal concern, her heart a block of ice. The calculation of it. The premeditation. She had used a medication, a tool of healing, to kill. She had used her knowledge of his weak heart to cover her tracks. All these years, he had grieved for AJ. He had felt guilt for their fractured relationship. He had wondered if there was something more he could have done. And all the while, Monica had known the truth. She had comforted him in his grief, all the while carrying the monstrous secret that she was the cause of it. The devastation was absolute. It was a physical pain, a tearing sensation deep in his soul. The foundation of his entire world, his memory of his mother, his understanding of his brother's death, his own sense of right and wrong, had been vaporized in an instant. He thought of Alan, sitting in the next room, still grieving the son he believed had died of his own demons. How could he ever tell him? How could he burden him with this? To know that the woman he loved, the mother of his children, was capable of such an act? It would destroy him. He thought of the family. Tracy, who would seize upon this with a vindictive glee. Ned, who would be horrified. Brooke Lynn, who had looked up to Monica. The scandal would be nuclear. It wouldn't just tarnish Monica's name, it would obliterate it. The Quartermaine legacy would become a sordid tale of murder and cover-ups. And Jason himself? What was he now? The son of a saint? Or the son of a calculating killer? The beneficiary of a fortune built on a foundation of fratricide. The condition of the will, he had to accept this truth to receive his inheritance. It was blood money in the most literal sense. It was the price of his brother's life. A raw, guttural sound tore from his throat, a sob of pure, unadulterated agony. He doubled over, his head in his hands, the weight of the confession crushing him. He felt betrayed in a way he had never thought possible. Monica's love, which had been his anchor for so long, now felt like a lie. Had every kind word, every supportive gesture, been a part of the cover-up? Had her love for him been so twisted that it justified the ultimate sin? He remembered the last time he saw her alive. She was weak, her voice a whisper. She had held his hand and said, "I need you to know, Jason, that everything I ever did, I did for this family. For you. You are my heart. Remember that. At the time, he had thought it was a dying mother's final declaration of love. Now, he understood it was a warning. It was her attempt to frame her crime as a necessary sacrifice. He didn't know how long he sat there, shattered. Time lost all meaning. The confident, controlled man who had walked into this room was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out shell, filled with confusion, rage, and a grief so profound it was a physical presence. A soft knock on the door startled him. Jason? It was Alan's voice, laced with worry. Son, are you all right? You've been in there a long time. Jason's head snapped up. His eyes, usually so clear and focused, were wild, red-rimmed. He looked at the pages scattered on the floor. The evidence of his mother's crime. His mother's crime. The words still refused to fully compute. He couldn't face them. Not yet. He couldn't look Alan in the eye and pretend that the world hadn't just ended. I'm fine, he managed to choke out, his voice gravelly and strained. I need a minute. He heard a muffled conversation on the other side of the door. He could imagine their confusion, their growing concern. Tracy's suspicious whisper. They were waiting for him. Waiting for him to come out and accept his role as the new head of the family, unaware that the family they knew was already gone, replaced by this grotesque, hidden reality. Slowly, painfully, he bent down and gathered the pages. His hands were trembling so violently he could barely stack them neatly. He placed them back inside the manila envelope, as if containing them could contain the horror. But it was inside him now, a poison in his own veins, as potent as the digoxin Monica had used. He stood up, his legs unsteady. He looked at his reflection in the dark glass of a bookcase. He saw a stranger, a man with haunted eyes, his face pale and drawn. Jason Morgan, the enforcer, the man who had faced down killers and crime lords without flinching, was utterly broken by a mother's confession. What was he supposed to do now? Take the inheritance? Become the steward of a legacy built on this secret? It would make him complicit. He would be accepting the fruit of his brother's murder. Every dollar would feel like a betrayal of AJ's memory, however flawed that memory was. Or should he refuse it? Walk away and let Thornhill disperse the assets? But that would raise too many questions. It would force him to explain why. He would have to reveal the confession. He would have to destroy Monica's name, devastate Alan, and plunge the entire family into a legal and emotional nightmare. The scandal would be endless. It would be the final, total destruction of the Quartermain name. Monica had trapped him. In her desperate attempt to unburden her soul, she had transferred the entire, crushing weight of her crime onto his shoulders. Her final act was not one of love, but of ultimate selfishness. She had chosen to die with a clear conscience, leaving him to navigate the hell she had created. He had to make a choice. A choice between two impossible paths. To honor the mother who raised him by accepting her terrible truth and living with the consequences, or to honor the brother who was murdered by exposing it and tearing his family apart. He straightened his jacket, a futile attempt to reassemble the pieces of his shattered composure.